Hey there, nation, and welcome to the show where we help you to play miniatures wargaming on a budget. It is I, Commander Cheapskate, and welcome back to another edition of Necro-Mondays, where we showcase weekly Necromunda Battle Reports every single Monday with our series Anarchy Road. And Anarchy Road is our narrative-based Necromunda campaign that is taking place within the Ash Waste of Necromunda. So this was a vehicle-based campaign, and this is the very last battle of round number 1 of our campaign. It is a convoy assault scenario that is fought between 4 different players on this one. So for this campaign, what we do is at the end of every single round, we have what's called a road war, where basically we use something from the road war section of our scenarios pack. So that way we can have multiple players playing at the same time to kind of celebrate the fact that each round is over with. Now for this one is a convoy assault scenario, and this one's actually kind of interesting because it's actually 3 gangs against 1 is what it ended up being for this one. So in this scenario, my buddy Darklord Mac will be bringing the road crew of the Pit Slaves, O'Death is playing the People Eaters of the Scavvies, and Brother Grimm is playing the Warboyz of the Ash Waste Nomads, and all 3 of those gangs will be fighting against me, and my gang is the Jury of House Orlock, and I do have a Guild of Coin alliance on this one as well. Now the reason why that is the case is because in the convoy assault rules, what ends up happening is that the gangs who fight in that scenario are trying to raid a guild caravan of some sort. Now the interesting thing about this one is that all 3 of the gangs are in this scenario: the Pit Slaves, the Scavvies, and Ash Waste Nomads. All 3 gangs can't have guild alliances because they're all outlaw gangs that live out in the Ash Waste of Necromunda. So because of that, they can't have an actual ally with a guild of any sort, so they have to be raiders. They automatically have to be attackers, and since I'm the only one who can actually have a guild caravan alliance, therefore I'm the defender in this one, and I get a guild of coin toll collectors warband that's added in this scenario as well. So it's my gang plus my guild allies versus these 3. Now I'm not officially allied with any gangs, I just am for this particular scenario because the rules require that, and so that's what the situation is going on with that game. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to play some background music real quick. If you want to see exactly what we're bringing for this one, go ahead and pause and take a look at your own leisure. So that being said, let's get this battle report on a roll.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
Alright, so the scenario for this one is Convoy Assault. It is a classic ambush of an unsuspecting band of travelers in the Ash Waste, and the gangs have awaited for just the right moment to strike. So this terrain will take place on a 4x6 table on this one, and the reason why is because we're using rolling road rules on this one. The players will be able to use their entire gangs in this scenario, and the defending player, which is me, must set up at the approximate center of the back short edge of the board with no more than 12 inches onto the board and all the vehicles facing the front edge. So I'm deployed on the far left hand side. At the same time, all enemy vehicles can deploy within 4 inches between vehicles, and within 4 inches of table edges over there must be located at as well. Now basically roll a d6, of course, as always, to figure out which one of us will be going first for every single turn, and we also have the rolling road phase on this one as well. The game ends when either the defender or the attacker exit the front edge of the table with all the loot counters and the defender bothers out, or the defender is defending my, which in my case I defend all my loot counters and I make it to the other side of the table and the other side as well. Now each loot counter on this one is worth d6 times 5 credits, and we have 6 loot counters which are carried by the guild caravan vehicle on this one. For experience, because this is a road war scenario, there's actually a much higher learning curve to survive in the Ash Waste, so the experience rewards are much higher in this one. So for example, if you survive the scenario, earn d6 experience points, you get 5 experience points for taking an enemy fighter out of action. The defending leader, which is my gang, also earns 10 experience points if I manage to survive until the very end. And if I manage to get all my loot counters across the table, I win an additional 10 experience points on top of that as well. And of course, if anybody manages to capture loot crate, they also get 5 experience points as well. And then for reputation, if you win the scenario, earns D3 plus D3 reputation points. Losers earn 1 point of reputation as well, and if gangs are fighting for the very first time, they also get 1 point of reputation as well, and of course if any gang bottles out, they lose 1 point of reputation. So the scenario rules over. Let's go and talk about deployment real quick, as well as battle plans. So here's an overhead shot of the entirety of the battlefield. As you can see, we are playing on a 6x4 table. I'm deployed on the left side of the table. My buddy Dark Lord Mac is deployed on the top of the table. Odeth's deployed on the right hand side, and Brother Grim is deployed on the bottom of the screen as well. So as you can see in my deployment area, I actually have 3 vehicles in my caravan. I have my 2 vehicles that are part of my gang, and then we have a special vehicle for the guild guys who are bringing their goods across the battlefield. I have 6 loot counters I have to protect. I got 3 loot counters on the back of my tumbler, which is the truck that carries all my gang members. We also have 3 loot counters on the armored car vehicle that the Guild of Coin is also driving as well. Now, my main plan here is to pretty much just try to travel across the battlefield as quickly as I can and try to outrun my opponents. My opponent basically my Scavvy opponent has a super heavy transport, so that vehicle is kind of slow. My opponent, Brother Grim, has actually got a pretty light vehicles because he's got 2 motorcycles as well as a medium chassis vehicle, so those ones are a little bit easier to destroy. And the only one that I'm really worried about for the most part is the Scavvies, as well as the pit slaves. Now, luckily for me, all 3 gangs I'm facing against are kind of handicapped because they have a lot of guys who are in recovery right now, while my gang has pretty much all their members, which is nice. Plus I have a guild ally as well, but at the same time though, I'm being surrounded and outflanked right off the bat, so I do have my work cut out for me. So that pretty much makes my battle plan for this one. So the battle plan over, let's go and talk about deployment real fast. Alright, so here's my entirety of the gang. This is my jury as well as my coal collectors. Up on the front, I have a vehicle called the Shipbreaker. That one's operated by Sorter as well as Reptile. It is a light chassis vehicle, small chassis vehicle. It's got a tool locker and boarding spikes. It's got 2 kill switches, spire hydraulics. It's also got legs to walk on. It's also got a hull-mounted las cannon on it as well. Right in the middle, that vehicle is called the Toll Collector, is what it's called. It is a large class vehicle that can holds all 4 members of the Toll Collectors. We have the Saracen, who's a master coin. He's got a last pistol, power knife, displacer field, gun skull. He's also got the leader, escape artist, and overseer skills. We also have Red Cap Killer on board that ship, who's a skin flint. He's got mesh armor, plasma pistol, fighting knife, as well as a cult icon. He's also got the lie low skills. And then we have 2 grovelers. We have Red Harvest, who's got a long rifle and a fighting knife, and the Pig Killer, who's got a shotgun with solid and scatter shot, as well as a fighting knife as well. Now the vehicle itself is actually a large class vehicle. It's got boarding spikes, hull blades, enclosed crew, as well as headlights. It's also got a supercharged engine with a kill switch on it. It's got armored tires as well as scythe tires, so it can cause some damage when it rams. And it's also got a hull-mounted ramming prow. And that pretty much makes up the vehicle for the toll cutters for the toll collectors for that one. Now on my Shipbreaker, I have Sorter. Sorter is a gunner who's got mesh armor and a Rocketancy special, and we have Reptile, who's a greenhorn, who's got mesh armor, a stub gun, dum-dum rounds, as well as a fighting knife. In the back, I have the Tumbler, which is my primary vehicle. It is a large class vehicle. It's got a weapons cache with boomsticks, a tool locker, spare parts chest, polecat boarding spikes, as well as boarding pikes, so that way I can board enemy vehicles. It's also got 2 kill switches on the engine. It's got spare tires as well as a turret mounted grabbing claw and a hull mounted heavy stubber as well. And on that vehicle I have Riptor, Lemonhead, Johnny, Darkside, Tetsuo, and Reptile on that. Not Reptile, on Tetsuo on that one. So let's go talk about my crew real quick. So my leader, Riptor's in the back. He's a road captain. He's got mesh armor, a Rocketancy special, a double-bladed knife, a combo bolter with a grenade launcher, as well as commanding presence ability. On that one is also my road sergeant, Lemonhead. He's got a mesh armor, combo bolter with a grenade launcher, a fighting knife, a stub gun with dum-dum rounds, as well as a big brother skill. Also on board my tumbler is Johnny, my arms master. He's got mesh armor, an arc hammer, a stub gun with dum-dum rounds, as well as a hardened nerves of steel, as well as rule of iron special rules. And then, of course, I got my driver, Darkside. He's a gunner armed with mesh armor, a Rocketancy special, and a fighting knife. I have my gunner, Tetsuo, who operates the weapons on board my tumbler. He's got mesh armor, auto pistol, as well as a fighting knife as well. And then flanking either side of the vehicle as well, I got my 2 wreckers, Tango and Reese. Tango is armed with mesh armor. He's flak armor. He's got a stub gun with dum-dum rounds, a fighting knife, a jump booster. He's got the hot-headed and fast learner skills. And we have Reese, who's actually equipped exactly the same way. And that pretty much makes my deployment for this one. Now on the top of the screen there, we got Dark Lord Mac's gang, the Road Crew. It is a pit slave gang. First of all, I got the vehicle, the Wrecker. It's got his entire gang on it. It's a large class vehicle with polecat boarding pikes. It's got weapons cache with boomsticks as well as a tool locker. It's also got a kill switch on the engine as well. Now in this scenario, he's actually only got 5 fighters participating in this one. He has Spartacus, which is his pit slave chief, who's the leader of his gang. He's got armor plates, paired shears, as well as a plasma gun with a commanding presence and escape artist skill. We have Mayday. She's the gang's techno. She's got a last gun, escape artist skill, as well as a fixer skill. We have Doc Dealgood in the back, who is a servitor. He's got armor plates, shears, a heavy stubber. He's got the industrial machine and escape artist skill. We also have Buzzkill, another pit slave, who's got armor plates, a buzzsaw arm. He's got a stub gun and dum-dum rounds, as well as escape artist skill. And they have Crixus, another pit slave, who's got armor plates, shears, stub gun and dum-dum rounds, as well as the escape artist skill. Alright, so down below we got the Warboyz. This is my buddy my buddy Brother Grimm's gang as well. So he's got 3 vehicles on this one. In the center of that vehicle is called the Death Killer Wartrike. It's crewed by Zogwarp, the World Killer, which is the Nomad leader, as well as the driver Slint, the guy who drives that. The Death Killer Wartrike's got a turbocharger on its engine. It's got a thruster tank as well. It's got Sky tires as well as a hull-mounted military-grade ramming prow. It's also a medial class vehicle as well. On board we got Zogwarp, the World Killer, the Nomad leader. He's got mesh armor, a plasma pistol, chainsword, respirator, as well as the Overseer skill. And driving that vehicle is Slint. He's a Nomad armor with mesh armor. He's got a Rocket Tansy special, fighting knife, as well as a respirator. Now on the left-hand side as well, we got a vehicle called Bike Number 1. It's got 2 crew members, Lord Among Us, as well as the Toady. It is a small class vehicle. It's got polecat boarding pike on it. Lord Among Us is a Nomad champion. He's got mesh armor, a 2-handed axe, a stub gun and dum-dum rounds. He's got bulging biceps as well as the parry skill. And also loaded on that vehicle is Toady, who's a punk. He's got a stub gun and dum-dum rounds, a fighting knife, and a respirator. And on the right hand side there we got Bike Number 3. It's crewed by Shagga and Bodhi. It's a small class vehicle with polecat boarding spike. Shagga, he's a Nomad who's armed with mesh armor, a stub gun with dum-dum rounds, a maul, and a respirator. And then we also got Bodhi, who's a punk, who's armed with stub gun with dum-dum rounds, a fighting knife, as well as a respirator. And finally, we have the people eaters of the Scavvies. This is played by my friend O'Death. We have that huge vehicle called the Meat Wagon. It is a super area transport that controls the that carries the entire gang as well. For its hull, it's got a weapons cache with boomsticks. It's also got a turret-mounted grabbing claw, so that thing is absolutely terrifying. On board, we have Shot Caller. He's the guy who's operating the grabbing claw on this one. He is a Scavvy boss. He's got flak armor, a blunderbuss, parrot axes, zombie bait, as well as a commanding presence ability. We also have Roar, which is a Scaly. He's got a scatter cannon. He's got the Nerves of Steel, Killer Rep, Regenerate, as well as cold-blooded abilities. We then also have a couple of Scavvies on board. We have Cannibal Renfield. Cannibal Renfield has a man catcher, a double-bladed knife, as well as a fighting knife. Deadhead Lee is another Scavvy armed with a wasteland longbow with an axe and fighting knife, as well as explosive arrows. We also have Crimson Wind, another Scavvy, who's got a wasteland longbow with axe, fighting knife, as well as explosive arrows as well. And then we also have Death Leaper, which is a mutant ash hound, which got wings, watchdog, and loyal protector skill. And then on this one, we actually have 4 plague zombies on this one. So in case you guys don't know what the rules, my buddy O'Death, whenever you buy zombie baits, he gets D6 plague zombies that he can bring into his crew. This time he rolled a 4. They're called the Roamers. They have Shuffle, No Pair, no Pain, No Fear, as well as Plague special rules. And that pretty much makes a deployment for the People Eaters. So with deployment over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 1, and all 4 of us roll for initiative to see which of us will be going first. So with that, we go directly to the top of turn number 1, and the Ash Waste Nomads get to go first. So his very first activation, my buddy Brother Grimm decides to activate Bike Number 1, which is Lord Among Us and Toady. Does a double move over to the left-hand side. Looks like he's going to try to skirt around the left-hand corner of the bottom of the battlefield, or to hit my caravan from behind. Up next, after that, we have O'Death, who then activates his command. Basically, activates his driver for the entirety of that thing, the Meat Wagon. That thing does a double move forward to drive up as quickly as it can across the battlefield. It's only movement 5, so the fastest it goes is movement 10 with double movement. So that thing is hella slow. Meanwhile, Dark Lord Malekith activates his driver Mayday, who then takes the Wrecker and actually does a double movement along the top of the battlefield, heading to the left-hand side, and looks like he's trying to actually go around the building there in order to attack my caravan from the left-hand side as well. So that part is absolutely terrifying. I'm slowly being outmaneuvered by all the gangs. So for my activation, I decided to activate Sorter, who operates the Shipbreaker. The Shipbreaker moves up in normal moon allowance of 12 inches, so that way it gets within range of fire its mining laser. I have my last can open fire directly onto Zogwarp the World Killer, as well as Slint's vehicle, the Death Killer Wartrek. This time though, I actually took a turn on actually aim directly at their engine because I wanted to cripple their engine and stop them from able to attack me. And as you can see in this photo, not only did I manage to hit their engine, I also managed to damage it as well. So that part was absolutely fantastic. The engine only has 2 wounds on a medium class vehicle with a 4 armor save. But because I have a last cannon, which basically causes 3 damage and also like eliminates all armor saves, I was able to destroy that as well. So as you can see in this photo, it just managed to explode up that engine. And so because of that vehicle can't move whatsoever. So in response, my buddy Brother Grimm goes next. He decides to dismount with both of his characters, both Slint, the driver, as well as Zogwarp, the War Killer, so he doesn't worry about getting any damage from the engine exploding on his vehicle. So now he's actually kind of in dire straits because one of his vehicles is now crippled. He'll either have to abandon the vehicle or actually spend turns with his fighters to repair the components. That way they can operate it again. So from there, we go directly to my buddy O'Death's turn. He then activates his gang leader, the Shot Caller, who then also activates his 2 other Scavvies, or armed with wasteland bow and arrows, which are Deadhead Lee and the Crimson Wind. Both those guys try to open up with their wasteland crossbow, firing fiery explosive arrows directly at the Shipbreaker. Luckily for me, one of them missed. The other one did hit, but failed to wound, so because of that, I got pretty lucky on that one. He was aiming for the legs on my Shipbreaker, which could have been bad, because if he crippled that, I wouldn't be able to move that vehicle too easily. So because of it, we go directly to the next turn. Afterwards, we go directly to my buddy Dark Lord Mac. I believe he tries to open fire with the heavy stubber from Doc Dealgood, his servitor, but unfortunately for him, he missed his shots. So that activation, unfortunately, was kind of wasted for him. So for my activation, activate the Saracen, who's the Master of Coin, who then also does a group activation for the members of his crew. He then moves the Toll Collector's vehicle up a double movement right behind the Shipbreakers, so that way you can still kind of be defended from in the calm formation from being attacked by the Raiders. So with that, we go to my friend Brother Grimm. Brother Grimm then decides to activate bike number 3, which is basically one of his fighters. They decides to move up forward as well. Shagga and Bodhi actually drive up directly using double movements directly to the toll collectors in order to board it. Now my buddy does try to board the vehicle originally with his little goblin, but unfortunately though he doesn't automatically board anymore because while he does have a boarding pike that allows him to automatically pass his initiative tests, the toll collector actually has boarding spikes on it, which means that you still have to roll an initiative test. So unfortunately for him though, he failed his initiative test, but he did pass his initiative test to make sure that Bodhi, his little punk, didn't fall off the the boarding pike, so he's still holding on for dear life, and that pretty much ends his turn on that one. So with that, I get to go next. I activate my leader Riptor, who does a group activation, activating both Lemonhead as well as my driver Darkside and my gunner Tetsuo. So because of that, Darkside moves up the vehicle in order to bring up the rear right behind the toll collector, so he spends his entire turn doing that. Tetsuo tries to open fire with the heavy stubber directly into my opponent, but unfortunately he missed his shots. Riptor and Lemonhead also do exactly the same thing as well, cutting loose with both their bolters directly into bike number 3. In the end, I believe it was Lemonhead who actually managed to put the injury on that guy. Managed to hit as well as wound Shagga, so because of that, he gets a serious injury result. So because of that, he goes crashing face down into the dirt, and he is currently bleeding out. And then Riptor does exactly the same thing, managed to hit, Bodhi, the punk, managed to hit him and wound him as well, and put a serious injury on that guy as well. So just like that, bike number 3, the crew are currently on the ground bleeding out, and that bike is currently unoccupied, which means that any moment of my game members can actually board that vehicle and actually hijack it because there are no kill switches on that vehicle. And I'm seriously considering adding a motorcycle to my convoy of vehicles, which would be all kinds of awesome. So Dark Lord Mac goes next. He then activates Crixus, which is actually one of his pit fighters, who then takes one of his boomsticks and actually lobs it directly at one of my wreckers, which is absolutely horrific. He goes after Reese, which is the closest wrecker that's to them, and unfortunately for me, she gets hit as well as wounded, and those things are strength 4, causing 2 damage, and unfortunately for me, Reese rolled up a serious, an added action result on that one, so because of that, she no longer participates in the scenario, and she will need to roll up on the serious injury table to see exactly what happens to her at the end of the scenario. For my next activation, then activate my other wrecker, Tango. Tango charges directly into Shagga and managed to finish that guy off with a coup de grace real quick. So just like that, net some 5 experience points, and Shagga will need to roll up on this lasting injuries table to see exactly what happens to him. Brother Grimm decides to go next. He decides to activate one of his, both Zogwarp the War Killer as well as Slint. They both do intelligence checks to repair the vehicle for the Death Killer Wartrike. They do manage to heal up 1 wound on the engine, so because the engine is now working, however, still got 1 more wound left on it. So if anything happens to that engine, it's going to be destroyed again, which is all kinds of bad for the Ash Waste Nomads. So with that, Dark Lord Matt goes next. He activates Spartacus, his pit slave chief, who basically does a group activation with both Buzz. I think with Buzzkill was the other guy he decides to do that with. Buzzkill tries to open up with once again throwing another boomstick directly at my crew, but unfortunately though he missed his shot, so not much happened there. Now what ended up happening is that Spartacus decided to use a maximum charge on his plasma gun. He tries to shoot directly at my tumbler, just going after my engine is what he's trying to do, trying to cripple my vehicles that way I couldn't go anywhere. Unfortunate for him though, he missed the shot, and to make matters worse, he rolled an ammo check and he failed his ammo check, which means the plasma gun explodes and Spartacus unfortunately goes directly out of action. He will need to roll up on the lasting injury table to see exactly what happens to him, and just like that, the first member of the pit slaves is down and out of action. So for my very last activation of the action phase, I then activate Johnny, my arms master, who then also activates my my mechanic that I have. His name is Blackfingers. His name. He's basically the hanger-on I was able to get for my gang. He's a grease monkey is what he is. So I decided to bring my grease monkey involved into this fight just because I was so heavily outnumbered, and that's the reason why I did that. He's actually the guy I get from my grifter territory, and from my grifter territory I either get 2d6 times credits from, at the end of the scenario, or I can have that fighter join it with my gang to fight. I decided to have him fight because he did have a ham flamer. He also got the munitioneer skill, so it was only, benefit for me to actually have him fighting. Yeah, 2d6 times creds is a lot of money, but I needed fighters more than I needed money at this point, so that's why he's involved. So because of that, Johnny as well as Blackfinger, they both get activated. They take a basic action to dismark the vehicle, and a simple action to move directly to bike number 3, because the 2 of them are going to hijack that vehicle in the next turn. So with the action phase over with, we go directly to the end phase. And during the end phase, unfortunately for Brother Grimm, he failed his bottle roll test, which means now during the next turn, for turn number 2, all of his fighters need to take a cool test to see if they actually stay on the battlefield. And when he rolled the injury dice for Bodhi, unfortunately for him, he rolled another out of action result. So because that, Bodhi goes out of action, and he will need to roll up on the lasting injury table to see exactly what happens to him. And unfortunately for my buddy Dark Lord Mac, he also has to take a bottle test as well. Unfortunately, he failed his bottle test, so just like my buddy Brother Grimm, he'll need to roll cool tests for all of his fighters during turn number 2 to see if they actually stick around. So the end phase over with, that takes directly to the end of turn number 1, and this is a shot of the entirety of the battlefield. As you can see, my convoy is slowly making its way across the battlefield, trying to survive as best it can. At the same time, the pit fighter trying to flank me on the top or on the Tower of Terror. Same thing with the Ash Waste Nomads coming from the left-hand side. Luckily for me, the Death Killer Wartrike was crippled this turn because it managed to blast its engine. And you can see on the right-hand side, the Scavvies are slowly trundling along, trying to catch up to us and get into the fight. So with turn number 1 over with, we go directly to the top of turn number 2, and once again my friends and I roll off for our initiative to see which of us will be going first. Alright, so that takes us directly to the top of turn number 2, and the Ash Waste Nomads get the priority in this one. So the first thing he has to do, of course, is take cool tests, and unfortunately for him, his punk Toady failed his cool test, so because of that, Toady is now running away, and he will no longer be participating in the battlefield on that one. Lord Humongous, his champion, though, has no problems passing his test because he decides to do a ramming action with his war bike directly into my fighter over there. His name is Tango. Decides to go directly into him. Unfortunate for him, though, when he rolled for the test, because that vehicle doesn't have any ramming prowess on it, which means that both characters suffer D3 impact hits. My buddy rolled for the impact hits. He rolled a 1 to hit for 1 impact hit directly into Tango. Unfortunately, though, he failed to wound Tango, so because that, Tango is completely fine. However, when it came for his roll, he rolled 3 impact hits, 2 of which wounded, which is absolutely horrible. So because of that, the warp bike's now got 2 damage to its hull, which is really unfortunate. So basically what ended up happening is this vehicle hit some kind of speed bump or a pothole or something and got damaged before it managed to go into my buddy Tango, which is absolutely fortuitous because that could have been really, really bad for my fighter. So from there we go directly to my buddy Dark Lord Mac. Dark Lord Mac activates his Mayday, who's his Techno, who also has a group activation. So she drives around the Tower of Terror. Meanwhile, at the same time though, Doc Dealgood, he dismounts the vehicle and also tries to move up his normal moon allowance so that way he can get a good flank charge, so that way he can open fire with his heavy stubber into my column. As you can see in this photo, what's her name? The Mayday, she actually does a double move with the vehicle to swoop right behind the back of my convoy. So that way she's within range of her boarding pikes, so that way she can board successfully onto the tumble in the back as well. And that's actually a bad kind of situation for me because pit fighters are extremely deadly in close combat. If she managed to get her pit fighters to board my vehicle, they could actually chew right through my Orlock fighters pretty quickly. My gang is more designed for shooting than it is for combat, so that part's kind of rough, especially since I got 3 loot counters on board my vehicle as well. So with that, we go to my next activation. I do a group activation with Johnny, my Arms Master. Johnny the Arms Master decides to board onto bike number 2, manages to hijack that vehicle, so now that bike is in my possession. Meanwhile, Tango decides to go close combat directly into Lord Humungus. I managed to hit him and wound him twice with my stub gun with dum-dum rounds. So because of that, we roll up for an injury dice for him and rolls out of action. So because of that, Lord Humungus goes out of action, and he'll need to roll up on the serious injury table to see exactly what happened to him as well. At the same time, his bike number 1 is also now open, which means I can easily hijack that vehicle, which I'm thinking about doing, adding 2 war bikes to my gang. Meanwhile, for my buddy O'Death, he decides to do a group activation with his general, who basically also does a group activation with his driver. What ended up happening is that his driver takes the meat wagon and actually moves up directly into the Death Killer War Trike, is what he decides to do on that one as well. Now, he doesn't have actually a ramming prow on his vehicle, so that's the reason why he didn't ram it. He just did a double movement to catch up to the vehicle. But he does have a grabbing claw, which causes D3 strength 10 hits with -4 AP, and he puts that directly onto the Death Killer War Trike, directly onto its hull. Managed to put 2 wounds directly onto the hull at the same time and snared the vehicle, so that way the vehicle can't go anywhere. It's because they're kind of stuck in the grass together. Now, he does also do a group activation with Snarl, which is the sorry, not Snarl, Rar, which is the guy armed with the scatter cannon. Unfortunately for him, though, he rolled to shoot and he rolled like a 1, so because I wasn't able to do anything much to that, so not much actually happened with that round. And because he had one more activation, he sent one of his plague zombies directly into the Zogwart the War Killer and actually engages him in close combat. Unfortunately for O'Death, his plague zombie failed, so because of that, it then goes directly back to Brother Grimm. Brother Grimm does a group activation with Zogwart the Warp Killer, who does a basic action to fight back against the plague zombie. Managed to put that guy in harm's way as well, and because of that, both fighters then also board the meat wagon and also start engaging close combat as well. I believe it was Slint was the guy who managed to put the last 2 wounds directly onto the turret mount for the grabbing claw. So because of that, the turret is destroyed for the grabbing claw, which means that the grabbing claw is no longer holding on to the Death Killer War Trike. So of course, my buddy O'Death could repair it in later turns, but at the same time though, the vehicle is now free. So because the Death Killer War Trike can move like normal during subsequent turns. So with that, we go directly to Dark Lord Mac. Dark Lord Mac managed to pass his cool test for his pit slaves. So because of the first thing he sends over is, what's his name? Buzzkill. Buzzkill then uses a polecat boarding pike to go directly onto my tumbler. Now I do have boarding spikes on my vehicle, so he doesn't automatically pass his initiative test, which means he has to take a normal one. He rolls a 5, so he's perfectly fine. So because that Buzzkill goes directly into the vehicle and start fighting against close combat with my gang. Lemonhead goes directly into the fray, and luckily for me, Lemonhead only came out with a flesh wound on that part, so that part was kind of awesome, so kudos to that. Meanwhile, Tango then gets on top of the vehicle and manages to hijack war bike number 1, so just like that, I got 2 war bikes now within my gang. With that, we go back to Brother Grimm, and since his vehicle from the Death Killer War Trike is now free, he decides to bottle out voluntarily is what he decides to do. Just because he's taken so many losses, and granted 2 of his vehicles are now hijacked by my gang, which is kind of bad for him, but he doesn't want to take any more losses than he already has, so because of that, he withdraws from the scenario. So just like that, we eliminate 1 gang off of this situation entirely. So from there, we go back to Dark Lord Mac. Dark Lord Mac then activates one of his fighters as well, which is Crixus, one of his pit slaves. And once again, he passes initiative test and successfully boards directly onto the tumbler. And he also charged directly into Lemonhead, catching that guy into close combat. And unfortunately for Limited Head, he goes directly out of action. And the reason why is because Crixus has Shears, which has -4 AP. I think it also causes 3 wounds as well. Needless to say, he just put the hurting directly onto Limited Head. Managed to put that guy out of action as well. So Limited Head is no longer participating in this scenario, and he will need to roll up on the lasting injury table to see exactly what happens to him as well. So not to be outdone, I then activate Riptor, who does a group activation with Darkside as well as Tetsuo. Darkside and Tetsuo decide to charge directly into Crixus as well as into Buzzkill, and Riptor does exactly the same thing. Needless to say, Riptor puts the hurting directly onto Crixus, managed to blow his head off basically with a Rocketancy special in close combat. So because that, he takes a out of action result and he goes out of action, he will need to roll up on the serious injury table to see exactly what happens to him as well. Now most of the other attacks between Darkside as well as Tetsuo against Buzzkill were pretty much kind of like a flub on that one. I wasn't able to get past his toughness, so because of that, those guys are still stuck in close combat. Meanwhile, across the table, O'Death spends another action in order to repair the turret on his grabbing claw and actually puts heals up 1 wound on it. So there's only 2 wounds left on that turret now. And for my next activation, I have Blackfinger, who's basically my mechanic. He basically, my grease monkey, he managed to board onto Warbike number 2, I believe, or is Warbike number 3, no, Warbike number 3, which is under the control of Johnny right now. O'Death has another fighter do another intelligence check and managed to heal another wound on his turret, so that thing is only 1 wound away from being fully operational again. And with that, I decided to activate Sorter, who's the pilot of the Shipbreaker. The Shipbreaker does 2 simple movements forward, moving up 24 inches across the battlefield, heading to the right-hand side of the table, so that way I can escape with my loot counters and escort my toll collectors. And Dark Lord Mac, not Dark Lord Mac, O'Death has his second to last member of his crew in order to do another intelligence check on his vehicle. Unfortunately, though, he failed his intelligence check, so the vehicle still has 1 more wound on its turret. I then activate the Saracen, and then does a group activation with the driver Pig Killer, who then takes the toll collector vehicle and moves twice its movement distance, going right behind the Shipbreaker, so that way it can escape with its loot counters as well. And for the very last action of the action phase, once again, O'Death uses his last intelligence check on his turret and manages to pass it. So now because that his grabbing claw is fully operational again, and he can use it in the battle report as usual. And with that, that takes us directly to the end phase. So during the end phase, unfortunately for my friend Dark Lord Mac, he decides to bottle out voluntarily is what he decides to do. He's only got 2 fighters left, and if I manage to take out Buzzkill, I can then board his vehicle and maybe hijack that vehicle as well. So because he decides to cut his losses at this point, doesn't want to lose any more than he already has, and so just like that, the pit slaves are out. So with turn number 2 over with, here's an overhead shot of the entirety of the battlefield. As you can see, there's only 2 gangs left now. We have the Scavvies, the People Leader, as well as my gang, the Jury. As you can see, I got the Shipbreaker as well as the Toll Collector moving about 2/3 of the battlefield. I'm going to got about 1/3 of it left before I can escape with my loot counters. At the same time, you can see the Tumbler as well as the 2 Warbikes I managed to hijack as well over there on the left-hand side too. And you can see in the bottom there, we also got the vehicle for the People Leaders as well. So with that being said, we go directly to the top of turn number 3, and both O'Death and myself roll off for initiative to see which of us will be going first. So that takes directly to the top of turn number 3, and the Scavvies get the initiative on this one. So the very first thing he does a group activation with his gang is what he decides to do. The first thing he does, he activates the Shot Caller, uses his Commanding Presence ability to activate his driver as well as the vehicle. So because of that, the Meat Wagon does double movements directly to the Toll Collector, which is the vehicle that's ran by the gang. And then of course, because the driver had moved the vehicle up, Shot Caller then uses his Grabbing Claw to ensnare the vehicle, causes 3 wounds directly onto the whole vehicle, and at the same time grabbed it to make sure that vehicle can't go anywhere either. And since he does a group activation, both Snarl as well as Cannibal Renfield, both those guys go do boarding actions and successfully board onto the vehicle as well. Unfortunately, I don't want to say unfortunately, but anyways, what ended up happening, the Toll Collector has boarding spikes, which means that they had to pass initiative tests, and luckily for O'Death, both of his fighters passed initiative tests, and they engage in close combat. Both the Red Cap Killer as well as Red Harvest respond in order to fight against Cannibal Renfield as well as Roar. Now, if you're wondering why the fighters are on the ground on the left-hand side, the reason why is just because I couldn't fit them on top of the vehicle. Physics won't allow it. So that's to represent the fact that they're fighting in the vehicle right now and fighting each other in close combat. In the end, my Toll Collector allies failed miserably in close combat. Cannibal Rainfield managed to put Red Harvest out of action, earning himself 5 experience points. At the same time, Roar managed to put a serious injury as well as a flesh wound directly onto Red Cap Killer, so both those guys are now down and bleeding out for the most part. So for my next activation, then activate Sorter. Sorter turns around with the Shipbreaker, takes a turn to get a +1 to hit with his last cannon, opens fire with it, managed to hit the turret where the grabbing claw is located on the meat wagon and managed to destroy it at the same time, once again, severely damaging. That part's really important because what that means now is that the Toll Collector vehicle is now loose and it can actually escape if it has to and move away from my opponent. So now to be outdone, I believe the character's name is Deadhead Lee. Deadhead Lee is one of the Scavvies who basically boards as well onto the vehicle and actually fights against the Saracens. The two of them are engaged in close combat. Unfortunately, I flubbed the rolls for the Saracen. I did horrible on that part. And at the same time, though, Deadhead Lee, though, he had no problem putting the hurt directly onto the Saracen as well. Actually wounded him once. But the thing is, though, is that the Saracen actually has a displacer shield when he ends up happening. So every single time he saves it, he actually gets moved back the number of inches of the strength of the attack. He got hit 3 times, I think is what ended up happening for the most part. So because of it, he gets shoved off like 9 inches off the vehicle and ends up on the other side of it, which means that the only guy left on the vehicle is the driver at this point. So what ended up happening, because the driver got taken out so easily, what ends up happening is that the 3 Scavvies on board managed to hijack the Toll Collector and also drive directly to the right hand side from the edge. They're about 2 inches away from the edge, which means that they managed to make that end, the scenario will end pretty quickly, which is kind of bad for me because that means I lose 3 of my loot counters, which is really, really bad. Now what ends up happening next is a couple of activations taking place within succession here on the right hand side. As you can see in this photo, my buddy O'Death sends in one of his plague zombies. He goes directly, tries to bore directly into the Shipbreaker, and so that action takes place. My Juvie Reptile, of course, has no problem putting the hurt directly onto that plague zombie, managed to put that guy out of action, at the same time earning himself 5 more experience points. And once again, O'Death does exactly the same thing, sending another one of his plague zombies who successfully boards onto the Shipbreaker as well. And he doesn't cause any injuries, so because they're just kind of stuck there in close combat for another turn. Meanwhile, then activate my Arms Master Johnny, who does a double movement with his warp bike, trying to chase down the Toll Collector as quickly as he possibly can, moves up his double movement allowance. At the same time, I then have Blackfinger, which is my mechanic, my grease monkey. He does a basic action to get off the vehicle, so that way he can get within range to open fire with his simple action, opening fire with his flamer directly onto the meat wagon as well, which is all kinds of awesome. I do manage to hit Crimson Wind, which is kind of cool, and I'll talk about exactly what happens to him. Unfortunately for me, though, I do roll an ammo check on that one, so because of that, I am currently out of ammo now for my hand flamer, which is kind of sad, but at the same time, though, I accomplished what I was trying to achieve. I managed to hit both Death Leaper as well as Crimson Wind with the hand flamer, so that part was excellent, so that part was all kinds of awesome. Managed to put a serious injury directly onto Death Leaper. And I also managed to put a flesh wound as well as a burning token directly onto Crimson Wind. Crimson Wind runs, I think, 7 inches to the left-hand side and is currently on fire with a flesh wound, which is all kinds of awesome. So with O'Death's next activation, he sends his other plague zombie stumbling forward, and I think that zombie only moves up 4 inches directly towards Blackfinger, so that part's kind of crazy. And for my next activation, activate Tango, who is currently driving on Warp Bike number 3, and I rammed directly into Crimson Wind as well. Managed to put a out of action result on him after managing to hit him twice and wounding him twice, which is all kinds of awesome. And luckily for me, I took no damage in return, so that part was epic. So for my very last action of the action phase, then activate Riptor, who does a group activation with both Tetsuo as well as Darkseid. Darkseid moves up the vehicle twice its movement allowance, doing 2 simple actions to catch up with the rest of the caravan. At the same time, Tetsuo opens up with his heavy stubber, and same thing with Riptor opening fire with his bolt gun directly into the zombie that's charging after Blackfinger. In the end, I believe it was Tetsuo was the one that's actually managed to put that zombie out of action by hitting it with the heavy stubber. So because of that, that guy gets eliminated off the roster, which is all kinds of awesome. And that pretty much makes up the action phase on this one. So with the action phase over with, we go directly to the end phase. And the first thing that my friend O'Death has to do, of course, is take a bottle test. Unfortunately for him, though, he does fail his bottle test, which means that all of his fighters will need to take cool tests for the next phase to see if they end up standing around. So during my recovery, I managed to have Red Cap Killer get another recovery, so he gets a flesh wound on him. So he is easier to wound now, but you'll be able to stand up and act during the next turn, which is kind of nice. And Death Leaper also manages to roll over as well with a flesh wound on him, and he will be able to participate in the next turn as well. And that takes us directly to the end of the game with the Orlocks managed to take the win on this one. And the reason why this one ended so quickly is because when we rolled for the action for the initiative phase, I actually won initiative on that one was what ended up happening. So I was going to go next. But what ended up happening is that my buddy O'Death had his vehicle, the toll collector vehicle. He also had 3 loot counters, so he decides to kind of bottle out. What that means is that he also hijacks the vehicle because it's under his possession. He's also got 3 loot counters, and so he decides to escape. So he decides to escape with that, which makes it a technical victory, but at the same time though, it's not really a true victory in my opinion, because he managed to get away with the loot, but them's the breaks, and that was the call he decided to make. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going directly to the post game because this battle report is now officially over. Alright, so let's go and talk about the Ash Waste Nomads of the Warboyz real quick. Let's talk about those guys real fast. So there's a couple of injuries on these guys. We had 3 members of the team that got injured, which was Lord Humongous, Shaga, as well as Toady. Luckily for my buddy though, Brother Grim, all 3 guys rolled out cold results. They're perfectly fine as well. For advancement, several members of this gang did advance. Zogwarp, the World Killer, the leader of this gang, leveled up to level 3, earning the Commanding Presence ability. Shaga leveled up to level 2, earning +1 to his toughness, and Sling did exactly the same thing. Slint, did exactly the same thing, leveling up to level 3, earning +1 to his toughness as well. Now from the territories, he earns 1 point reputation from the wasteland, and when he rolls his d6 to see exactly what rewards he gets from the wasteland rolls, he actually rolls a 6, which means it's a caravan raid, which means that every single fighter they send going out exploring, they actually come back with, I think, is d6 times 10 creds per fighter is what ends up happening, and he had 6 guys going out there. So in the end, he managed to score 240 credits, and at the same time also gets enough foodstuffs to feed his entire gang to avoid starvation. Now, because of that, he ends up with 250 credits all in all, because he can take the 10 credits from his stash, ends up with 250 credits. Now, the way he could do this, because he's got his bikes missing, he could actually either do a rescue mission and try to get his bikes back from my gang. And the problem with that though is that if he fails, I keep those war bikes, or he can buy his bikes back. In this case, he decided to do that. He said, hey, can I give you my 250 credits in exchange for my war bikes? It's actually 260 credits is what those 2 bikes are actually worth. It's only 10 credits less than they actually were. And so I decided to see that, because let's face it, why risk losing those vehicles in a rescue mission when I can get cold hard cash and a guarantee? So because I decided to trade it back. So because that war bike 1 and war bike 2 goes back to his gang for 250 credits, he takes the remaining 10 credits and puts it back in his stash as well. For his reputation, earned 1 point reputation from his territory, as well as 1 point reputation from the scenario. He also earns 3 point reputation because he's fighting against all 4 of our gangs for the very first time, but because he bottled out, he loses 1 point, which brings his grand total of 5 points reputation in total. His new record now is at 0 wins, 1 loss, and 1 draw, and his new gang right now is at 2,170 points. Alright, up next is the road crew of the Pit Slaves. So for injuries, 2 members of this gang got injury, which is Spartacus and Crixus. Both those guys rolled out cold results, so they're perfectly fine. At the same time, 4 members of this gang also leveled up. Spartacus leveled up to level 2, learning the Overseer skill, so because that he can now do double activations for people. Doc Dealgood also leveled up to level 3, earning +2 to his movement, so now he's movement 6, so that's a really quick servitor. At the same time, Buzzkill leveled up to level 2, earning +1 to his toughness, and Crixus leveled up to level 3, earning +1 to his weapon skill and +1 to his toughness as well. From their territories, from the Wasteland, they earned 1 point reputation from the Wasteland territory, and at the same time, my buddy rolled a 5 on the D6 chart, meaning that he found mutant animals, which means he's got enough food to feed his entire gang. At the same time, managed to scrounge up 10 credits. He took those 10 credits and placed them all directly into the stash. For his reputation, he earns 1 point reputation from his territory, as well as 1 from the scenario, as well as 2 points reputation for fighting against 2 of the gangs for the very first time. However, he loses 1 point of reputation for bottling out, so because of that brings his grand total to 6. His current record right now is at 0 wins and 3 losses, and his new gang rating now is at 1,760 points. So in second place, we do have the People Eaters. That's O'Death's Scavvies gang. For his injuries, he actually suffered 1 injury, which was Crimson Wind. He actually suffers a grievous injury, so he goes automatically into recovery. Now, 3 members of his gang did level up. Roar leveled up twice to level 3, earning +1 to his initiative, as well as learning the Crushing Blow skill. Cannibal Renfield also leveled up to level 4, leveling up twice, earning +1 to his Bliss's skill, as well as +1 to his toughness. And Deadhead Lee also leveled up twice, earning +1 to his Bliss's skill and +1 to his intelligence. And the reason why they leveled up so much is because not only did they take people out of action, but they also captured loot counters as well. From their territories, from the Wasteland territory, they earned 1 point of reputation from that, and they also found a mineral outcropping, and the gang was able to scavenge up 33 credits in all. So at the trading post, they lose 30 credits in order to feed the gang, and they earn 55 credits from the 3 loot counters they managed to capture. With those 55 credits, they purchased zombie bait as well as for the gang, as well as a blunderbuss for Cannibal Renfield, and they took the remaining 38 credits they had left over and placed it directly into their stash. And because of that, they also managed to capture the Toll Collector vehicle from the Guild of Coin as well. And they actually renamed it the Zombie Bomber, which is actually a pretty powerful vehicle because it's worth over 1,000 credits and it's got a lot of upgrades on it. But they managed to hijack it, so because of that, they were able to keep it. For his reputation, he earned 1 point of reputation from his territory as well as 1 from the scenario as well, and he also earns 3 points of reputation from fighting against the gangs in this battle report for the very first time. However, he does lose 1 point of reputation because he decided to ball out, which brings his grand total to 6 points. His new record now is at 1 win and 2 losses, and his new gang rate now is at 3,325 points. And finally, we're going to talk about my gang, the Jury. So I suffered 2 injuries on this one. Lemonhead, he suffered an out cold result, so he's perfectly fine. However, Race, though, she suffered grievous injury, so she'll miss out in her next battle report. For advancements, actually quite a lot of members of my gang advanced on this one. Rip Turtle leveled to level 4, earning +1 strength and +1 attacks. Lemonhead leveled to level 2, earning +1 to his cool. Darkside leveled to level 3, earning +1 intelligence. Tetsuo learned level to level 2, learning the specialist skill, so now you can spend his experience points like a champion, leader, or as a juvie. We also have Sworder leveled to level 2, earning +1 intelligence. Reptile leveled up twice to level 3, earning +1 weapon skill and +1 ballistic skill. And Tango leveled to level 4, leveling up twice, earning +1 toughness, as well as learning the gunfighter skill as well. For my territories, for my Wasteland, I earned 1 point of reputation from that, as well as managed to scrounge up 17 credits, because I think what it was just, I think I rolled a 2, and that's the one we just find. Credits is all you end up doing for that one. For my Grifter territory, I don't receive anything from that because I had Blackfinger fight for me in this game, so because of that, he goes back to his territory. And because I won the scenario, I also earned get another territory in this case, in which case I found a workshop, which gets me 2d6 times 10 credits, so that part was pretty awesome. I managed to get 40 credits from that, and I also recruited an ammo jack named Sulako, who's armed with mesh armor. He's also got a bolt gun and a power hammer, as well as the munitioneer skill, which is awesome. Now, the trading post, I earned 45 credits from the 3 loot counters I did manage to save, plus 57 credits from my territories, and the Warboyz bought back their 2 war bikes that I captured, earning me 250 credits from that. At the same time, I also had 93 credits in my stash, which brings my grand total to 445 credits in total. I spent 200 of those credits to buy a comms network for my vehicles, so now I can group activate my vehicles now, which is awesome, as well as spending 175 credits for a pintle-mounted harpoon cannon with a chain winch that I put directly onto my tumbler as well. I also purchased another stub gun with dum-dum rounds for Tango, because he's got that gunfighter skill as well. With that, I had 65 credits remaining, and I put those directly into my stash. For my reputation, I earned 1 point of reputation from my territories, as well as 3 from the scenario, as well as 3 from fighting against these gangs for the very first time, which brings my grand total reputation to 11 points. My new record now is at 3 wins and 0 losses, and my new gang rank now is at 3,370 points. So that's good news for this one, you guys. As always, please feel free to like, comment, and or subscribe. Your guys' input is available to us as always. Also check us out on Facebook, Instagram, as well as blogger.com for all the latest, greatest hobby news related to our channel. That's good news for this week, guys. We'll catch you guys next one. Peace out and stay classy.